In making our thriller film opening, there are many things that went well, and many other things that went less well. The first thing I'm going to discuss is shooting material appropriate to the task set. When making our thriller film, we carefully chose to film and use content that was relevant to the thriller genre. We thought the best way for us to apply the thriller conventions to our sequence was to film a chase scene. In using a chase scene, we could easily, appropriately incorporate fast-paced editing and other conventions that made our sequence thrilling. However, our chase scene turned out to be reasonably generic, hardly deviating from other existing chase scenes. Because of this, it was fairly unoriginal shooting material. Our chase scene also took up the whole 2-minute sequence, which in hindsight seems unnecessarily long, and a higher variety of content in the sequence may have been better. The next topic that I'm going to talk about is controlled use of the camera in our sequence. Throughout our sequence, we used a basic Steadicam in order to stop the camera from shaking and to ensure smooth movements. Due to this, the camera is reasonably well controlled in all of our footage, and it made the whole sequence look more professional. The Steadicam we used, however, was completely handheld and had no extra supports like the more advanced models do. And in using a better Steadicam, we would have been able to achieve more controlled footage. More practice handling the camera would have also helped us create more controlled footage. Attention to framing. Throughout the whole of the sequence, we made sure that the viewer would not be able to see the antagonist's face until the final few scenes. We did this in order to create enigma, and we achieved this by paying attention to the framing in each individual shot. We wanted to keep the antagonist's identity a mystery, and we thought that this was the best way to achieve it. As well as this, we also kept each character within consistent or appropriate positions in each shot. Unfortunately, towards the end of our sequence, in one of the scenes where the antagonist is chasing the protagonist, we unintentionally revealed the antagonist's face where we still wanted to keep it hidden. We were not aware of this until we were editing the footage. However, it has taught us to be more careful in filming and to review footage as we take it. Variety of shot sizes. We used a whole variety of shot sizes in our sequence, as can be seen here. In doing this, we created the level of pace that we wanted to create in our sequence. Although, we could have still used a higher variety of shot sizes in our sequence in order to create more pace and to make our sequence more interesting. However, I think we had a good variety of shot sizes. Close attention to mise-en-scène. We paid some attention to mise-en-scène in our sequence. Some examples of this are where we placed rubbish around the sleeping area of the protagonist in order to show how he'd been living there and that he was homeless. Another example is how we filmed our sequence in an abandoned school, since this was the kind of environment that we were looking for. We also paid close attention to the antagonist's costume. We chose smart but practical clothes for him to wear, such as a smart shirt and a smart coat. We did this to try and create an obvious contrast between the clothes of the antagonist and the protagonist. We also decided to film in the late morning to get the right kind of natural colour/lighting that we were looking for. We also naturally incorporated body language and facial expression into the sequence. However, we could have paid more attention to many other elements of mise-en-scène in our sequence. For instance, the antagonist's costume was not well thought out. We should have focused on his costume more. We also didn't use makeup in our sequence, which we could have done to make it better. Editing so that the meaning is apparent to the viewer. We tried to make all editing in our sequence as meaningful as possible. Early in the sequence, there are multiple shots of the antagonist walking towards and into a building, where the protagonist is sleeping. Between these shots of the antagonist walking, there are shots of the protagonist sleeping. This shows where the antagonist is travelling to, and makes his purpose more apparent. We made use of a sound bridge in this scene, in the form of the antagonist's footsteps as he walks towards the protagonist. The footsteps are continuous between the shots of the antagonist and the protagonist. We also used a fade to black in the last scene, to show that it was the end of a sequence. Although I think we did quite well in this area, I think we could have focused on it more and still made our product better. Making selective and appropriate use of shot transitions, captions, and other effects. In our sequence, we mostly used cuts throughout the whole of it, as we thought this would be the best way to create pace. We did, however, make use of fade to black transitions during the title sequence, and as mentioned earlier, on the last scene to indicate that it was the end of the sequence. It may have been beneficial for us to have used a larger variety of transitions where appropriate. Recording and editing sound with images appropriately. In our sequence, we used Foley sounds to create a more interesting soundscape, as the sound in our original recording was very quiet and lacked continuity between shots. We used Foley footsteps where the antagonist is walking into the building, and Foley door crashes where the doors slam into the walls as the antagonist is walking. We also used an appropriate soundtrack for our sequence. We think that it matched the scene that we were trying to set. However, the Foley footsteps that we used in our sequence were slightly out of sync and therefore did not sound right. That's the end of the portfolio review.